This is Kyra Pierce. This is Just Saying.
I believe that the time is right.
This is for educational purposes only. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel.
Momentum of the trends that are taking place
Knowledge
in the
is
world right now
power.
and be decisive about what you do. I think people can have a role in shaping the political and economic landscape of the 21st century. It's not going to look like the last century. It's going to be very different. And I think that you can have an important role in determining how it does look. People can have a role in that. I'm talking about
Possibilities.
Changes.
Anything possible in this time.
This is absolutely not the time to be complacent or to be defeatist or to be pessimistic or to be timid. Not at all. We are living through a period of tectonic transitions in global power dynamics. That's not a joke. This isn't just the same old
Stay
we
positive.
are at a crossroads rhetoric that politicians always trot out. No, there are very
Stay high
massive changes taking place in the international order.
Change can.
This transition period,
it's
this
a good
transitional
thing.
period, is very real. And
learn, adapt with the time.
Previously unthinkable. So we need imagination, we need creativity, we need boldness.
Anything possible with the Lord Jesus Christ.
And discipline and persistence. But I truly believe that we are moving into an unshaped future that we have the power to shape for the first time in a very long time. The West is eating itself. America has functionally been reduced to a regional power, not a global superpower. They're hollowing out the state.
Embrace the change, grow with the change.
It's being dismantled.
That's it, all of it being dismantled.
The world order upon us, the world order that we've always known, they're all suffering either imperial osteoporosis or anemia or hemophilia or dementia. None of the rules and none of the paradigms that they impose need to be retained. None of them need to be maintained. None of them need to be preserved. More important than a power vacuum developing, there's a vacuum of organizing principles for the world order. And we can actually have a role in filling that vacuum, in my opinion.
Right.
I'm saying we can actually organize the world differently. Truly. All of these Western
and change your
concepts can be
mindset.
jettisoned. All of these concepts that they used to divide and rule, to trap, to restrict, to dictate, to set the parameters, to define, and so on, to tell us what reality had to look like, how reality had to operate, and so forth. We don't need to have to be bound to any of that anymore. We can get rid of all of that.
And create your own reality.
How
be talented and creative.
This moment that we're living through, how significant it is. Like, okay, you see Trump, for example, doing things and proposing things that seem completely out of left field. Buy Greenland, turn Canada into the 51st state, leave NATO, the federal government,
endless possibilities,
and the NED.
Potential.
But what I'm telling you is that he's not the only one who can do this. There is no inside the box thinking when the box is being taken apart.
Think outside the
box.
You
can propose and initiate and pursue previously unthinkable things too. And you should. Prime example is Burkina Faso. The whole Sahel region, actually. But Burkina Faso is consistently taking the lead. Unprecedented steps are being taken in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré is proposing ideas and policies that would have been, these would have been things that you only dreamed about on your couch 10 years ago. And things are moving very rapidly. Faster than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And here's the thing, that vacuum is going to get filled sooner rather than later. That's also going to happen rapidly. So again, it's a time for bold ideas and bold movements. I think the Article 6 campaign is a good example of that. It's such a movement. That would have been impossible before, to imagine expelling the United States from the United Nations just a decade ago, but it's completely feasible today. We already have 100,000 signatures on that petition, and now we're moving, inshallah, forward with that campaign to raise it to the political and diplomatic level. But also, for instance, I mentioned in a video recently the idea of using the logic of Trump's gold card visa program, which commoditizes American citizenship. He's selling residency and citizenship for $5 million. This isn't the same as an investment-based passport. It's literally just a purchase. He's turned citizenship into an asset, into a product. So you can use that same logic to push for Americans to have the right to sell their own citizenship for either a fixed price or a negotiated price. Because why not? I'm not joking. Do it. Start a petition for that. Start a movement for that. Organize. Demand that right. You should. There's no reason whatsoever why you shouldn't push for that. There's no telling where it can go and what kind of impact and what kind of outcome you can eventually achieve from pursuing something like that. Don't be timid. It's the wrong time to be timid. You know, I also mentioned quite some time ago that African Americans, if they constituted a country, well, that country would most likely apply to join BRICS. There'd be a significant developing economy. Well, I think you should take that seriously too. Not just African Americans, but also called minority groups, minority communities in the United States, all members of the global majority living in America. Bear with me here. This is an idea that could fundamentally shift the economic and political landscape for so-called minority communities in the United States or in the West generally. The prospect of these communities gaining recognition within BRICS as sort of economic extensions of their ancestral nations. It's not just a theoretical discussion. We're talking about real empowerment, real economic sovereignty, and real political leverage. But again, you have to be bold enough to imagine it and to actually work practically to bring it into reality. I mean, let's just stick with African Americans, for example, Black Americans, for the moment. If we assess the African American community as if it were a sovereign country, using the BRICS admission criteria, I think that the results would be quite compelling. I mean, one of the requirements of BRICS, part of the criteria for joining BRICS, for BRICS membership, is that you have to be a large and growing economy. Okay, let's look at that. The total African American GDP, if we considered that to be a separate economy to the United States, is estimated to be between $1.8 to $2 trillion, making it roughly equivalent to the economy of Brazil, a founding member of BRICS, or South Korea, for example.
We can do it, people.
Now,
That's what it's showing you.
The Black American community,
The way
and think
we
of it as a
buy
distinct nation, as if it is a country.
our money,
We will also see that it looks
investing
very
in
much
us,
like a colonized
investing in
country.
ourselves.
So, for instance, while as an economy, it's quite
We're making
substantial.
them millionaires,
Economic
trillionaires.
growth rates lag behind other BRICS nations due to systemic barriers like wage disparities, lack of wealth accumulation,
They need us.
limited
They
economic
need
sovereignty, and
us.
so forth, just like a colonized nation. Think about that. You can literally think of the African American
We can turn it
community,
around in our
the Black
favor.
American community, as if we're talking about a colonized African country that rather than being invaded from without by colonizers, it was amputated from Africa and brought over to where the colonizers are. You know, it's a colonized African country inside of America. Just put that in your mind. Now, another criteria for BRICS, BRICS membership, is that you should have a diversified economy. Well, African Americans contribute to every sector in the
Right.
American economy. You know, from media to technology, healthcare, finance, obviously entertainment and sports and so on. But again, just like a colonized country, there's a lack of control over major industries that they participate in. A lack of corporate ownership. Most economic participation is as consumers and as employees rather than as business owners or as investors. And obviously a great deal of that is again due to systemic impediments, just like a country under colonization. BRICS also looks at whether or not you have a significant trade volume. Well, obviously,
Right.
African Americans, as you know, being under the American government, they don't have any control over international trade policies,
Right.
but they do have high consumption power.
Right.
About
Facts.
$1.6 trillion annually.
They need us.
Probably more. They play a
I
major
think it's
role
more.
in America's overall trade relationships globally. That's a fact. Don't think of the African American.
We need to pull
community
back from
as
their
just a collection
system
of
and build our
consumers
own.
within the United States, but
We're
think of it as a
powerful.
sovereign economic force, as a nation with its own global trade relationships. Like I said, if we took African Americans as a separate economy, it would be worth over $1.6 trillion in consumer spending. 1.8. That's larger than most countries. But the question is, are you just a market to be exploited? Or will you assert your own interests in global trade? See, this is exactly one of the issues that colonized countries have always had to struggle with, controlling their own trade relationships. Look, the only reason that countries like China or India or Japan or South Korea sell as much as they do in the United States is because of you. Your spending power fuels entire industries.
Right.
Yet
And
you
we
have
can
no
use
direct
that and
relationship with the
dominate.
nations
We
that
can
you trade
use
with.
that.
Instead, your role is reduced to being passive consumers, while corporate middlemen dictate the terms of trade on your behalf, but not in your interests. Why are you allowing yourself to be a colony when you should be a nation? I'm saying take
You learn
direct
better,
control
you do better.
of your global trade. Ask yourself this: if African Americans had a sovereign economy, would you let foreign nations extract your wealth without negotiating fair terms? You know, would you allow others to speak for you in trade deals?
That's it.
Or would you send your own trade ambassadors to China, your own trade ambassadors to India, or to Africa, or to Europe, to negotiate on your own behalf? You know, China is your biggest supplier. That's your biggest trade partner, a foreign trade partner. African American spending drives massive imports from China. Clothing, electronics, beauty products, appliances, on and on and on. Without your consumption, many of these industries would collapse. That's just a fact. So why are you not negotiating with China directly? Why don't you have African American trade delegations meeting with Chinese business leaders? I mean, maybe you do, I don't know. I haven't been there for a long time. But you need direct relationships, business partnerships. Bypass the American corporate middlemen who mark up the prices and control the supply chains and so on. You don't need to go through them. If African Americans had their own independent economic councils, they could establish direct trade relationships. They could cut the costs, they could increase ownership, they could ensure fair treatment and so forth. You see what I'm saying? Establish direct ties. The second largest foreign trading partner of the African American community is India. You know, the hair and beauty industry especially. African Americans spend between roughly $1.2 billion annually on hair products, hair and beauty products, which a significant portion of that comes from India. But why aren't you negotiating with Indian suppliers on as equal trading partners? You know, do you have African American trade ambassadors in India securing direct sourcing agreements? Why allow multinational corporations to be the gatekeepers when you're the ones who are sustaining this industry? You see what I'm saying? If you control the flow of capital, you control the industry that relies on that capital. You should be setting the terms, not just being a customer. Because look, you know, I know we always act like being a consumer is exclusively a weak position, but it doesn't have to be passive. It doesn't have to be like that. There's no business without consumers. Consumers have power. You know, even the European Union, do you know that you keep the African American community keeps the luxury industry alive? African Americans spend billions of dollars on European brands. Gucci, Louis Vuitton, you know, Balenciaga, what have you.
Right, facts.
What if instead
We
of just
do.
buying, you demanded equity in these
We are
companies?
big consumers,
What
but
if
we
you
can
had
turn that
stood
back
in the
around in
very
our
industries
favor.
that you support with your consumption?
That's the
I mean,
point
you
of
can
this
negotiate.
video.
You have leverage. You have the power of your spending. Use it. Okay. If you think of African Americans as a country unto themselves, then obviously your biggest trading partner of all is the United States itself. African Americans, like all Americans, spend the bulk of their income on housing, on healthcare, on education, entertainment, and all of that is controlled by American corporations. All of your money is going to American corporations, most of it. But right now, you don't negotiate your role in the economy. You just accept whatever's given to you. But why should African Americans or any other minority so-called group allow their wealth to just be extracted without any reinvestment? You know, this is a dimension of corporate democratization. You're not just workers or consumers in this system. You are the foundation of wealth for entire industries. So you should be negotiating like a sovereign entity. Become a nation within a nation. And that's for all so-called minority groups in America. Economic sovereignty doesn't mean that you're isolating your community economically.
Facts.
It just means control. It means that before a single dollar leaves your community, it circles within your community.
Right.
It circles within your networks first.
That's
It means
it.
that you dictate the terms of your trade relationships, not corporations that just exploit your spending. This is what every nation does, unless it's colonized. So now the question is, are you going to continue playing the role of a colony, or are you going to take your place as a sovereign economic power within the United States? Because until you do, you will remain what you have always been in America, just a resource to be extracted, not a force to be reckoned with.
Okay, so BRICS also looks at potential members' investments in infrastructure. So in America, infrastructure, housing, education, healthcare, and so forth, this is all either corporate or state controlled. And again, systemic issues have historically deprived African American communities of any sort of equitable investment in these areas. There is an emerging trend, I think, in the U.S. of investment in real estate, in tech startups, financial institutions, and so on, but it remains relatively small. But this shouldn't disqualify a nation from being a part of BRICS. Rather, it should be a motivation for joining, and for BRICS seeing the potential and the promise of such a partnership, because it's sort of an untapped area, you know what I mean? Then the, fifth criteria for BRICS is assessing human development. Well, alhamdulillah, you know, African Americans are highly educated, over 90% literacy rate. They have a strong representation in most professions, a number of professions, the arts, the sciences, and politics. So I don't think there's any issue there. But then you have the colonization elements in America that undermine human development, such as the disparities in healthcare, obviously the incarceration rates, systemically engineered generational wealth gaps, and so on. All of that will sort of pull down the overall human development indicators. Then you have what BRICS calls global governance.